Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for this week's episode of Westworld, Season 3, Episode 6, Decoherence, and I was definitely really looking forward to this episode. Despite how I kind of felt disjointed last week's episode was, still two very strong arcs for sure, but I just felt that it wasn't an episode that was as well paced as it could have been despite the fact that I feel we're really kind of rushing through some things, I still really liked what we got last week. I liked the deeper exploration of Serac. I liked what we were setting up with the data leak and things like that, and so I was fully prepared to see what was really going to happen here, and I have to say, once again, this is going to be a very similar review to last week's, because for the second time in a row, this episode left me very conflicted. I don't know what it is about this season, but I keep ending episodes of Westworld not knowing how to feel about it until a second watch. And thankfully, similar to last week, I did like this episode. I do think this is one of the weakest episodes of Westworld so far, and I do kind of question where some of the series is going moving forward, but there was a lot to like in this episode for sure, and the things that were good were definitely really fucking good. So we're just getting to right now. So there's really, similar to last week where we had two plots going on, that's basically the same thing with this week, except this week we focused on the people that we didn't focus on at all last week. So Maeve, Hale, or Shaloris, as people are calling her, which I am not calling her that. I'm just going to refer to her as Hale because I'm not doing that. And William. That's mainly our focus of this episode. So I'm going to go from the stuff that I really liked first, and then I'll get to the things that just didn't work for me as much. Easily, I think the strongest stuff in this episode we can all collectively agree on is Hale, or, this Dolores, clone of Hale, basically, is probably one of the most fascinating characters I think we've ever had on the show, because this is a character that was designed to be a certain way. She was designed to basically act like Dolores and feel just like Dolores, and basically just be another way for Dolores to make sure that this plan goes off without a hitch, so she can keep Hale in this position and she can acquire funds and things like that, and, be able to, get collect all the data that, Serac was making and things like that. But I really love where this character is headed, and I thought her arc in this episode was just fantastic. And Tessa Thompson, once again, this is maybe proving to be the best role she's ever played. I mean, she's played a lot of roles, don't get me wrong. She's a phenomenal actress, but I really do feel, based on what we've been getting with her lately, this may just end up being the strongest role she's ever played, because I'm just loving everything about her this season, particularly where she goes in this episode, because while we do focus on her trying to still redeem Hale, we also see her trying to balance that with performing the duties that Dolores needs her to. And what I really like about this character of Hale, and what I think that they've done a really great job with, is, like I said, it's given Charlotte Hale a lot more layers, because this Hale isn't just interested in the stuff that she needs to do at Delos and, acquiring all of this money from Delos, because obviously they're kind of in a bidding war right now with Serac, and she's trying to acquire as much as she possibly can. Meanwhile, Serac is really starting to take this to his advantage, you see. I mean, he's killing all these Delos board members, and he's taking over everything. He's trying to copy all of these hosts and things like that, so he clearly has his own agenda. And so, when the one thing I cannot say about Westworld that I just do not understand is how people say that it doesn't feel like the same show. I very much feel like it does, because Delos is still very much in there. They're just not as much of the main focus anymore. The focus now is what happens after Delos, and things like that, and what happens when other businesses try to acquire this technology. How can they survive in that way, and expanding more of the human side of things, which I feel like Westworld has always been doing. So my complaint with the season, I do definitely have some flaws with this season, but it is not at all that it doesn't feel like the same show. I would not say that at all. I think there's definitely some very clear it's very clearly that this is the direction that they want to go, especially since Jonathan Nolan said like this was the season that he initially pitched. But whatever, I'm that going back to Hale. I went on a bit of a tangent there, getting away from that for a second. I thought they did a really good job in this episode with just showing how desperately she's trying to control both of her lives, and especially the scene with her husband, Jake, who says that he does not recognize this side of her, this side that's scared, this side that's vulnerable. That's something that Hale really never was. She was very cutthroat, she was very corporate, and she always seemed like she was on top of things. And so seeing this side of her that's far more emotional and isn't always feeling the best and isn't always feeling like she's on top is really refreshing to watch. And I think it's just really showing Thompson's acting ability, and I really love what they're doing there. But I also like how, again, we can see just through scenes like this that she really is becoming her own entity in that way. While she sympathizes with Hale and she wishes that she can fix what Hale couldn't, she's also starting to realize, I'm not Hale. This is not who I am. This is just a facade. This is who I have to pretend to be. And as much as I care for this family, which we can tell she really does, she's starting to reconnect with her son. She's really trying to reconnect with her husband. This is not actually her family. This is not her purpose. I think her best scene in this entire episode, aside from the ending, which was just madness, and we'll get into that because it was just nuts. What the best scene for me was her conversation with Dolores when she calls her on the phone. And when I mean Dolores, I mean the actual Dolores. I know it's a bit confusing, but that's why I'm still referring to her as Hale, so you know who I'm still talking about. But when she's calling Dolores and says that like she's really starting to slip away and she doesn't feel like she is equipped to do this anymore, I really do feel this season is going to end with her kind of veering in her own direction. Her not abandoning Dolores entirely, but her setting off to do her own thing, because I really do feel like if this episode shows us anything, she's not really up to the task for this. She's not really someone that wants to do these things. She wants to focus on her family. She wants to protect them. She wants to get them out of this dangerous situation, but she also is someone that is subservient to Dolores because that was her initial purpose after all. And so she's very conflicted, you can see. And I think that is a great arc for this character. I love what they're doing with her right now. And when we get a little bit more into, what she's really doing and the way that she was almost fooling Serac, you thought things were maybe going to go her way because, they need to make this data copy that Dolores needs and things like that. And you think maybe this is going to go her way for a second, but then Serac realizes that no, this is not Hale. Hale does not care this much about her family. And I like the way that he noticed it just through little irregularities in this version of Hale. And it shows how long he's really been in her life. I think the show's done a really good job at making it seem like he's kind of always been there. I think that's definitely very effective for sure. And that whole standoff with her was just so intense when she's trying to get in there and just make sure that this plan really goes through. And then obviously we'll get to the stuff with Maeve in a little bit, but the way that whole standoff went down, and having, his guards just moving in there and her finding almost poisoning Serac's entire staff, but not being able to poison him because he's still just that projection inside Rehoboam, again, is just really effective. And I love the way that scene was done. With her getting away from the host machines, but she does get to grab the damaged Dolores core, which I was glad to see that she did. That part did go off, and that's the thing I think they're doing a really good job with, is that even though we're not entirely sure if we want Dolores to succeed, we want Hale to succeed because we care about Hale. Hale at this point feels maybe the most human out of everyone on this show right now, and I think Thompson is just doing such a great job with that here. And so the way things ended, though, with her alerting her family and trying to get them out of there, I was really hoping that she would be able to get out of there successfully, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Serac is one step ahead, and the car is blown to bits, and I was just in utter shock. Now, I will say, It is a bit far-fetched to believe that she would survive this because we saw that scene before where Serac was literally burning bodies in Delos, all of the host bodies that were in there. He was just setting it all, he was just setting it all ablaze. So it is a bit hard to believe that, but everything that's going on with Hale is so interesting right now. I don't really care. I don't really care that Hale survived this. I think that it was definitely the right place to go. It's going to make her character so much more interesting because now it really is a battle not just between Dolores and Serac, but also between Hale and Serac, and I can't wait to see the way all of that goes down. So yeah, I'm definitely very excited for sure. I can't wait to see the way things do go down there. And like I said, out of everything going on this episode, this was easily the thing I was most interested in for sure. Now, everything else going on this episode, I'm a bit more conflicted with. Now, the Maeve arc, I definitely did enjoy. I think is well done here. But the way that it's being handled, I just think is a little bit messy. So I get it that Serac wanted Maeve to basically, he like took her under his wing and things like that to be the one to take out Dolores. I completely understood that. And I knew that Maeve was going to come back. There was no way they were going to kill her off. Thandie Noon is way too good for them to just axe her off like that. There was no way that was going to happen. What I don't understand, though, is why Serac decided to send her back to the same simulation. To me, it just seemed like he did this because they needed to keep Simon Quarterman on this show, and they needed to keep Rodrigo Santoro on this show for one more episode. So they decided to just bring her back here, and I just don't really know if I love the way this went down. I like that Hector got his memories back. I thought that was really great, and I do like that her and Sizemore are teaming up. I think Sizemore is a really interesting character, but what doesn't make sense to me is that he doesn't actually exist. He's not a real person. He's stuck in a simulation. I don't really know how this is going to work moving forward. I get it that they went in the fictional Delos and that, in the fictional Delos and things like that, and that Maeve was trying to stop Dolores from doing what she was doing. And I did like the scene where she confronted, like, the clone of Dolores, and she's trying to, tell her how Maeve isn't the most ethical person either. And I actually did like that debate. It kind of goes back to how a lot of the show is blurring the lines between good and bad, and how there really isn't such a thing as good or bad in this show. And it's true, Maeve can very much control people with her mind. And I like the way that Dolores, warns Maeve that, you want to do this, you're gonna need allies. You're gonna need to have planned ahead, but it's just simply too late at this point. And yeah, obviously she was definitely right because Hector is in fact killed, and it definitely was very devastating. The way that was done was great, but it's one of those things where I feel like it would have been ever so slightly more effective if we would have waited a few more episodes. If we would have had a few more episodes of Maeve in this simulation, even if she knew it was a simulation, just seeing a little bit more of Hector and Maeve and kind of giving us this false hope that maybe they were going to be able to get out of this and maybe they were going to be able to end up together, I think it would have been that much more effective. And so, again, while I definitely liked the way things wrapped up with Maeve now having this new host body and coming in just guns blazing now, and there is a really good parallel between Hale now going after Serac because he took away the people that she cared most about, and now Maeve going after Dolores because she took away the person that she cared most about. I think there's a good parallel there. I just feel that one was much more, it was felt much more earned than the other. I think Hale, we've had a lot more time to focus on her family and how much she's trying to fix the wrongdoings in, the actual Charlotte Hale's life. I don't think we've done as good of a job with Maeve exploring her losing Hector. If we would have had some scenes of Maeve kind of being distraught about the fact that the Hector that she loves isn't the same Hector anymore and that he's, no longer with her, I think that actually would have been very effective, but it's just not the case. And so I just don't really know how this is going to go moving forward. Is she going to acquire some kind of new pearl so she can make an actual size more, because again, he's not actually real, but I'm assuming those two are going to team up moving forward. At least it kind of seems like that's where they're headed, but I guess we'll see. Again, I love Thandie Newton on the show. I love the opening scene, especially where she's just being a badass and just, you know, just like decimating all of those guys that were coming after her one by one. I thought that was very effective, but just in general, I don't really love where the story is headed. It's a little bit messy for me, and I think this season would have benefited more if they would have taken a bit more time with Maeve in the simulation, with Maeve and Hector. I just feel it'd be a little bit, I just wish it was a little bit better handled than it was here. So that storyline was just a bit messy for me. Now, unfortunately though, the storyline that just did not work out for me in this episode is whatever the hell they're trying to do with William, because I'm sorry to say it, I love Ed Harris on this show. William is one of my favorite characters, but at this point, I really don't see what purpose he serves on this show anymore. I really don't, and I hate saying that because I feel like there's so much they could be doing with him. And they had me for a while in this episode. Everything we got with William at first, I thought was great. I loved him in therapy when he doesn't want to talk about anything. It kind of reminded me of a similar scene. It's a different show, but it's a scene with Mike in Better Call Saul season 4 with him grieving over the loss of his son and him not wanting to talk in this group therapy. It's similar to William, except William is just denying everything. You know, anything that they're selling, he sees it as bullshit. He knows that he shouldn't be here. I do personally think William should be here, though, because it's clear that he is doing some hard soul searching right now. It's clear that he does feel loss over Emily. He wishes that he would have believed her. He wishes that he wasn't so impulsive in that way. And I think they're doing a good job with diving into that. But the whole scene of William meeting all of his other selves is a fantastic idea. I was all for them to do that. And, you know, everything leading up to that, the scene with his therapist and her reading what was going to happen to her, and then her just, her just straight up hanging herself, I thought was very chilling. And they did do a really good job of portraying the mass riots that are going on within the town and things like that. The scene of them telling everyone to stay in their homes, though, hit way too hard. I definitely will say that. But I did like that, you know, everyone is pretty much in a mass panic because of all their fates and things like that. I think that still is very effective. But for every scene like that, there's scenes of William biting a doctor's hand because he doesn't want to be operated on. I just thought it was a little too silly. And I think the same with all of the, you know, council of Williams. This is a brilliant idea. I love this idea that William is giving him like this self-therapy. Basically there's like this device that he puts on his face, you know, and he basically gives himself his own self-therapy. We see Jimmy Simpson's William, we see the corporate William when he was married before his wife killed herself and things like that. We see the Man in Black version of William, but we also see this kid version of William that we haven't seen before, and I thought this was a really cool idea. But I have two major issues with it. One is that I don't think they were taking it as seriously as they should. I thought there was way too much comedy going on in this scene, and I feel like it should have been a far more introspective look at what William has done wrong to get him to this point. I really do feel this is something that would have been more effective if it was an entire episode. Similar to how I thought Sirach last week should have been an entire episode. I just really do feel this would have benefited if we would have gotten an entire episode of just William speaking to himself and kind of having this self-reflection of sorts. And so that wasn't really working for me. What they were doing with him I thought was interesting, but the conclusion that we're led to in this episode, I don't understand how it tells us anything new about William, because at first we're led to believe that William was abused by his father, that he had this really rough upbringing, and I was fully prepared for them to go there. I was like, okay, this actually tracks really well. It shows why William ended up the way he did, why he ended up very aloof, and why he was very emotionally aloof and things like that. Why he did end up going in a very dark direction towards the latter half of his life. It all kind of made sense to me. But then it's revealed that's actually not the case. His father is just chastising him because he got into a fight with some kid at school, knocked out 2 teeth, and William doesn't seem to have much remorse about it. And that's it. That's literally all we learn in this episode. And I'm sorry, but that's really not that great of a reveal. If they were going to dive more into William's childhood, it should have been something way more profound than just, oh, he got into a fight with a kid at school. Because again, like I said, I get what they were doing. I just do not see how any of this is new information. We've known that William is dark. We've known that William, he's always kind of chosen darkness in his life. We understand that. We know he's a very complex character. And so him saying to, Delos that he's going to be good, it just wasn't an effective scene for me. I thought it was honestly kind of corny. I didn't buy it at all because they've tried to do this with William before, and I just really didn't buy it. Again, I love Ed Harris, but this arc is just really not working for me. I'm sorry to say. I really do like the character a lot, but I just feel that they have no idea what to do with him, and no scene tells me that more than what follows it up with Bernard and Stubbs somehow just randomly tracking him down. We have no idea of how they did this. There was no buildup to it whatsoever. They just randomly find William. They find him in this abandoned mental... Somehow everyone's just gone. They just kind of left him there. I don't understand how that works either, but they've just left him there. They bail him out of this facility. I guess everyone was just that scared by their fates, and so now they're going to be teaming up. And again, I love the duo between Stubbs and Bernard, but I don't understand how William fits into this. I don't understand what they need William for. I have no knowledge of why they even went to find William. So yeah, this whole subplot just did not work for me at all. And I hate saying that because again, I do really love this character, and I was fully ready to say that this is one of William's best episodes yet. I was so ready for them to give us a really dark and very tragic story of what happened to William as a child and what kind of made him this way. But really, it just kind of felt like a retread of what we already knew. I do kind of like the idea that, were you meant to be this way? But they didn't even really dive into that. It's just like a line of dialogue. And I don't really feel like it was enough overall. So yeah, that storyline just isn't really working that much for me. And I hate saying it, but I really do feel it's maybe the weakest William storyline we've gotten so far. I love Ed Harris, but this character, I just don't really feel like he's serving much of a purpose on the show anymore, and I feel like this episode kind of confirms that. So yeah, overall, go story-wise, that's basically everything I do have to say story-wise going on in this episode. Again, direction in this episode, I do think was overall really well done, but it is clear to me that they are focusing a lot more on action this season, and I don't think any thing proves that more than when the behind the scenes look at this episode was just how they constructed that whole car crash at the end, which again was a great scene, but I would have liked to see a little bit more going on with, what's going on with this character, what's going on with this character, because I love watching those featurettes that they do. This was by far one of their weakest though, because it was literally just, oh, here's how we did this car wreck, and it's like, cool, I love the way they did that. I think it's really cool the way they constructed that scene, but I would have liked a little bit more focus on character, and I do feel we're starting to veer away from that a bit. I feel like we're focusing a little too much on action. Not with Hale, but some of the other stories, it really does seem like they're kind of rushing through things, and the writing, I think, is also suffering because of that. Again, not with Hale. Hale is still great, and Caleb's storyline is great too. I think those two characters, the show is doing an excellent job with. In fact, I'm really excited for next week because it seems like it's all going to be flashbacks of Caleb's past and what he has blocked out. I think that's going to be a great episode, and I really hope it is, because I love what Aaron Paul's been doing on the show so far. But all these other characters, it seems like, are starting to suffer because of it. Maeve, for example, like I said, just her whole plot line is just coming across as very messy to me, and not disjointed, but just underwritten. I really do feel that this would have been more effective if it was in 10 episodes rather than 8, and I feel like that's the issue that I'm continuing to see this season. It's just, I don't know why this season is only 8 episodes long. I liked the slower storytelling that they were doing in the first 3 episodes. I think that's very effective, but I feel ever since that 4th episode, it really does feel like they're rushing through a lot of this season. And, plot lines like what we got with Maeve, and especially William in this episode, are very much suffering because of it. And so, again, the writing is just very 50-50, but still, what they're having to say about the concept of free will, and also the way they were portraying the rioting, I think is well done. But even at that, I don't believe that every single person would have, like, the worst fate possible. I just don't believe that. There had to have been at least one person that had a good fate, that wasn't as affected by this. And I was kind of waiting for that to happen. I was waiting for, like, just a simple joke of someone being like, oh, I just read that this and this happens to me. Like, something that's not so dark, because I'm sorry, that's just not believable. I can definitely buy into the fact that there's a mass majority of people that had these terrible fates, sent to them, and now they're terrified that they're going to happen, and so they're acting out because of it, and so, there's suicides and things like that. That I totally understand. What happened with, William's doctor, for example, like I said, I think that's one of the most effective scenes of the whole episode. It's very quick, but you understand she is very worried about what's going to happen, that she's going to be banned from practicing law, that she's going to be banned from, being a doctor. So she's worried that this is going to happen to her, and so her only way to prevent that is to just end it all. That is honestly, that totally makes sense. That absolutely tracks. Again, it's tragic, but it definitely does make a lot of sense. What doesn't make as much sense is that everyone would be acting this way. So I'm waiting for them to go to that one person that isn't going to act in that way. So I guess we'll see how that does turn out. And again, I think that's something that, again, they're doing a good job with, but also they're not doing a good job with. But the writing of Sirach and Hale is really well done, and the way they are setting up that battle between Maeve and Dolores, I think, is also really good. So, again, the Maeve storyline, like I said, I do mostly like it. I just feel it's a bit underwritten overall. But the cinematography in this episode, easily some of the best in Westworld history. The car chase, the whole gun battle with Hale, just so many phenomenal scenes in this episode. And again, just the aspect ratio changes as well, telling you that we are in this simulation, I think is really well done. I love the way they're going about that. I love the 40s setting that Maeve is in. I like that we got to see more of that in this episode. The score still continues to be great. And then the editing, like I said, it's just very disjointed to me. Again, this really feels like one of those episodes that could have been it's 3 of its own episodes. Really is feeling that way, especially with the Williams stuff. I really do feel that Williams' plotline would have been far more effective if we would have gotten an entire episode of that, and because it was just a subplot, I think it very much did suffer. So again, there's a lot I really did like about this episode. I do like where the show is headed. I just really am starting to feel like, yeah, this is definitely the worst season of the show. This is the weakest season by far, mainly because of, again, it really does feel like they are starting to just really rush through things that would have been far more effective if we would have just had a little bit more time to delve into some of them. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll get to the finale of the season and I'll be like, you know what? They proved me wrong. But things like Maeve's storyline, which I think is kind of messy, and you know the fact that we got Sirach's backstory last week, but it wasn't an entire episode, and what we got with William in this episode, the fact that the show still has no idea what to do with Bernard or Stubbs, and them helping out William now. These are just things that are a bit concerning to me. These are things that are making me worried that maybe the show is not going to deliver in the way that I want to. It is on some fronts with Hale, definitely. I think they're doing a great job with that, but there are still some things that I'm just a little bit conflicted with if I like where they're going. But overall, I still did enjoy this episode. I still thought it was a pretty decent offering of Westworld. So I am going to give this episode of Westworld, Season 3, Episode 6, Decoherence, overall a B-. But over, guys, to my review this week's episode of Westworld. The most guys saw this episode overall. Lift your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.